a go button to press, or is anybody telling
Go.
us what? There we go.
Yeah, we're
okay.
here.
Well, yeah, the important people are here, so let's get going. Okay. Well, we've got a good start, and first thing I got to mention is for me the two underground comics publishers that I respect the most by far are Dennis Kitchen and Ron Turner. And I've written about Dennis, and I actually years ago had the opportunity to moderate when he was a spotlight down in San Diego Comic-Con. And so, you know, I've run into Ron a couple of times, and but when Mike got in touch with me and said, do you want to moderate a discussion with Ron Turner, it was like, well, fuck yeah. And so I'm really honored to be here, to be able to be in this position. And we're just going to dive right in, okay, at first, and you know, that's the question. It's like, you know, 1970, it was a situation where 99.9% of the underground comics were about sex, drugs, and self-indulgence. And then Ron kicks off last Gasp with his first his first comic, which was, you know, about ecology and saving the world, and his second comic, which was, you know, was about feminism and promoting women in comics. So, you know, which leads to an obvious question: what have you got against sex, drugs, and self-indulgence?
I must have had a hand injury at that time.
Well, that explains it. Yeah.
Well, I thought that I really loved Underground Comix. I started reading them. I was working at Kaiser Hospital doing studies in allergies and emotions while I was finishing a master's in experimental psychology at San Francisco State. So I was up in the upper mental regions, but on my real side, where I've always been a comic fan as a kid and a big EC fan and whatnot, and then I'd left all that for many years. And so at one point during a New Year's Eve party, we got very stoned at Berkeley with one of my coworkers, and somebody gave me a Zap Comics. And the Zap Comics just blew my mind. I kept rereading it all night instead of attending the party. And it took me a while to figure out, but finally I found Gary Arlington. He had opened the first comic book store in the States, and it was in the Mission District. And I just went nuts on these things because it was like a real respite from, we were in the middle of the longest student strike in U.S. history. My roommate was head of the Third World Liberation Front at the time. You know, we were kind of like battling 2,000 police on campus every day, helicopters, being chased by cops on horseback. You know, it was such strange stuff. And then, you know, then you have to work, do your work, put on your lab coat, and then you have to go home at night and read comics to get. And these things were just wonderful. They had gotten away from the kid stuff and into the adult things. So there was sex and drugs, which was a big time going on with myself and others at that time. Can we shut that door?
Sure.
Yeah.
Shut those people?
Yeah.
Shut up!
I hate it when they just come here to discuss the bathrooms. So, so at one point, it seemed like we were involved, my friends and I were involved with about every cause there was. We were out Saturdays marching for Cesar Chavez, and Sundays we were doing something else for the movement. And there was always another thing. And I had a friend, Rod Freeland, who was running the printing presses at the Berkeley Ecology Center, which was the first ecology center of its kind in the country. And Rod I'd met him through the United Farm Workers because he'd run the presses down in Delano. And we would get together, we thought, like, well, what would be ecology movement needs a big economic hand. What could we do? And I said, well, the craziest thing that's happening now are Underground Comix. It's the best visual, best stuff going on. And everybody agreed. So a bunch of us got together, smoked dope on Saturday mornings, and tried to draw an underground comic book, which we're going to use as a benefit book for the Ecology Center. It was terrible. There was a few good artists, but they weren't cartoonists. There were a few guys who had some good ideas, but they couldn't put it to paper, and so we just gave up. And I said, well, I'll do this project, but you know, I can't be involved in any more meetings. I will kill myself. I'll go postal, and I'll kill you too. I can't have any more meetings. Just I've had it, burned out on it. And so everybody said, fine, you can do it. So I ran around and I knew Gary, so I got hold of Gary, and he introduced me to Don Donahue, who had done the first Zap comic. And it was really nice because it was all the origin stuff of the whole movement. Donahue had been at UC Berkeley. He was a San Francisco boy. He met Charles Plymell, who had a little printing press that he got from Allen Ginsberg on an art grant. And this was told to me by Ginsberg, so I assume it was true. Little A.B. Dick, and also known in those days as a Shaky Dick. And so Donahue, when we finally got this thing all together and figured out how to do it, and strong-armed some Berkeley drug dealers into lending us some money so that we could print it, we went out and pulled together this crazy ragtag group of artists. And I said, well, here, I got this whole story here about this and this and this, and they all say, oh, that's nice, but I have my own mind story set. And so people like Greg Irons, who did the cover, you're looking here at Slow Death #1. This is the second printing. The first one had a red background to it behind the monster. And you have to remember that in terms of the times, we had just landed on the moon in '69. And I remember that day very well because my girlfriend was in Cuba at the time with the Weather Underground and a few other people. And I wandered downtown Market Street, and they had this Polaroid thing of the Brooks camera where they had a picture of the moon and you could like pose in front of it. And I've forever been trying to find that photo. But the whole thing, people were like, we're now on the moon. So Greg's conception was, in terms of ecology, you'll see here, is these are, in the monster's hair, the monster that's already eaten half the earth, are all these corporate entities in the hair. And it's reaching out and it's got one ugly, filthy claw on the moon. So that was our statement about that. Gary Arlington, I think, was the one who thought of Slow Death Funnies because we needed a title. And Rod Freeland, the printer guy, I think he suggested Last Gasp Eco Funnies Company. And so we made the Slow Death the comic, and we needed a name for the company, so it became Last Gasp. And our logo was Greg's edition, and he had a skull and crossbones filled with a tongue gasping out and eyeballs. So that was how it happened. We had a big fat price of 50 cents each. Now, how did that work out? Well, 50 cents meant you went to 30 cents to the store, 20 cents it cost a distributor to buy it. The artist made a nickel, they got 10% of the retail. The printing was about 6 cents, and that included maybe the bindery, or it might have been another penny there. So that left a possible net profit of around 8 cents or so for each one. So we, not knowing any better, I printed 20,000 copies. And because that's the only way that it worked out to pay the artists what they wanted for a page rate. They give me a page rate. So we kind of had it back in the information to make everything fit. In order to make it fit, you had to print 20,000 of them. So we went down to the Berkeley Ecology Center and said, okay, here you are, here's your thing. But in the meantime, from the time we started the project about December of '69 to a couple weeks before Earth Day in April of '70, everybody that we knew at the center almost had left to go either to the jobs that were opening up in Washington to this new thing called ecology, or the other half of them had gone out and bought boots and and wool shirts and gone off to blow up PG&E towers hiding in the mountains. You know, it's kind of like that kind of split in ecology movie. So I went down there, and the guy at the bookstore, this guy also named Ron, looked at me and he said, "Well, gee, I think we'll take 10 copies for the bookstore." I said, "No, I got 20,000 copies." He said, "Well, I don't know, we'll take 10. So I lugged them all back to my garage in Berkeley, put them in there. And then I had to keep moving garages. If any of you have any thoughts about becoming a comic publisher, don't move the things. Get them somewhere where they can stay. Or print on demand or something. A question, yes?
What were the size of the original? Is that 11 by 17, or is that bigger?
No. It's 7 by 10. The image sizes were 6 by 9 on the insides, and with a 1/2-inch border all the way around the pages. And then the covers were 7 by 10.